Welcome back to Politics Unplugged. The Trump administration had a big presence in the Valley on Tuesday. The Secretary of Homeland Security, the Border Policy Advisor, and the Health and Human Services Secretary were all in town. Let's bring in our panel to talk about that. We've got the Republican consultant, Marcus Dell'Artino, and the Democrat here at the table, Matt Grodsky. Let's start with you, Matt. Let's say your takeaways from the big three stopping by here this week. You know, the way I looked at it is, immigration, border security, a big strength for the Trump administration. Numbers like border crossings are down. The metrics are all pretty positive for the Trump administration. And I think they wanted to talk about this, particularly here in Arizona, a swing state, to kind of change the narrative and get away from all the stuff we've been seeing with the tariffs.
I think that's certainly what they wanted to try. I mean, you've got Noam going around, not just here, but to El Salvador. And I think, unfortunately, she's trying to go for a Laura Croft kind of look, and it's coming off as a sad Kim Possible situation. What I find most intriguing is in MAGA world, they're getting tired of, their words not mine, the cosplay stuff. I think you saw Megyn Kelly go out there and kind of admonish it. So I don't know if this is landing the way they want it to. So I think there's an opportunity for Dems to kind of call this out, not dissimilar from the way Senator Gallego did this past week in terms of, hey, is this really playing with independents and moderates the way you think it is? I know they're interested in changing the narrative, but I'm not sure this is getting it done.
Yeah, and the numbers, when you start looking at the border numbers, it's pretty positive for the Trump administration, as I was saying earlier. And in fact, yeah, why not just tout those numbers? But at the same time, they're saying they've made big successes down at the border. They're also asking for and promising to spend more big money at the border. Doesn't that kind of hurt their argument? If the problem is getting solved, do you need all this money?
No, they're spending money to take care of the problem now, which means you're going to need money ongoing. I mean, there has never been anybody who disagreed with the fact that we need more Border Patrol agents. The wall actually has not been completed and has major gaps in it that still needs to be filled. There's technology needs that need to be done. So if you want to have these successes, you've got to keep investing to have these successes.
Yeah, and you want to get your takes, too, on, Kristi Noem, Homeland Security Chief. She's out here. She's participating in raids. She took some pictures with herself holding a gun, some video of her going out on these raids with ICE agents and rounding up some migrants that were suspected of being here illegally.
Yeah, I think what will be interesting is if they stop doing this over the next few months. Again, I'm not sure it's playing very well. I think you could see a similar situation where he reins her in a little bit like what he's supposedly doing with Musk. I just don't think the El Salvador visit landed the way they wanted it to, the stunts this weekend. And ultimately, on your point about investing, she's kind of talking out of both sides of her mouth. There's $69 million that were frozen, that we're owed, that we need for border security and public safety. They're not releasing it. So I'm not really sure what their long-term game is other than just doing these photo ops.
I would just add that election result after election result shows that this focus on illegal immigration works. Not only for Republicans, but independents. And I would point out the Democrats didn't do themselves any favor from walking out and protesting a speech by the border czar on the floor of the State House this week.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you about those demonstrations and how do you think that played with the public at large?
I think it plays for their base very well, and I think that that's what it was designed to do. I don't think it plays very well for those independent, middle-of-the-road voters, and certainly those moderate Republicans that want some accountability on illegal immigration.
And I was going to say, Marx makes a good point here. When you start looking at the election results last November, the Secure the Border Act overwhelmingly passed. And so when you start looking at those middle-of-the-road voters, swing voters out there, they were obviously voting in favor of that.
That's why I think the focus needs to be more on calling out the things they're saying and doing. I think the comments this week about, turning deportation into some kind of an Amazon private sector service. You're seeing the situation with sending the wrong individual without due process to El Salvador. I think we need to be talking about those types of things. I don't know if the walkouts are as effective, to Marcus's point, with the swing voters in middle of the road.
And Marcus looks like he has something to say here.
Well, I think the borders are covered all of those topics. It is speech on the floor, and I wish there were more people that would have listened. But when you talk about child trafficking, a disgusting thing that happens in this country, and the crackdown that these ICE agents are to find these kids, good. Go do more of it. Find these kids, bring them back to their families.
I want to ask you, too, Robert Kennedy Jr. here in town. Why did they send him out here?
You know, I don't know if you've heard this yet, but we're kind of a swing state. So expect a lot of these visits in the next few years, number one. Number two is there are a couple bills down at the legislature that are sort of right in his sweet spot dealing with foods, red dye number 5, 10, whatever number it is, and all these products that we're sticking into foods. And I think that was perfect messaging to have him as an advocate for getting rid of those additives to our food to be there for that bill.
And your takes from Kennedy Jr. coming out here, and I didn't see him asked or press much about this growing measles outbreak.
Yeah, I'd like to see
Texas.
him pressed more on that. I agree. I think the school lunches thing, that's safe territory. But you talk about swing states. If this measles outbreak gets worse, particularly in swing states, it's in Texas right now, but if it comes to Arizona, goes to places like Wisconsin, I think you see him less and less out here on the stump because I think he could easily become persona non grata the same way Musk has.
All right, now I've got 15 seconds. I want to end with this. We had the governor on here in the first segment talking about funding for the for this program for disabled kids. How does it end?
This bill gets vetoed. They go back to the drawing table. It gets funded. The guardrails are drastically different than are in the proposed legislation.
All right, we're going to have to end it right there. That is all the time we have. And be sure to join us next week for more Politics Unplugged. Good night.